Squawk Box, uniting two congressmen from different sides of the aisle this morning. Our guest host for the next hour, Connecticut Democrat Jim Hines. He's a member of the Financial Services Committee. And New Jersey Republican Scott Garrett. He's the vice chairman of the House Budget Committee. Great to have both of you gentlemen with us, and so timely after all this. And I hope you guys can point fingers and blame each other, because we want to try and get to the bottom of what happened last week.
The media, we can agree on that, Jim, that we're going to point a finger at.
You can point it, yeah.
I can't quite reach you, Scott.
Well, yeah, whatever you guys do, we will hype it and distort it and maybe hack your phones. But other than that, let's start with Scott. Last week, when you saw the potential for a big deal, and it almost looked like Boehner and the president might be actually having a little bit of a meetings of the mind. Were you one of the congressmen that Cantor would not have been able to bring along in a big deal like that? I mean, did it ever get close?
So I didn't think that we were as close as the media was portraying that we were at that point in time, because I know where the conference is. The conference is, and where it always has been, that we will not be supportive of any tax increases. So we're along the same line.
Was there always $1 trillion on the table? I thought maybe there wasn't for a little while. And did the president, on Friday backtrack on what he was willing to do with Medicare and Social Security after hearing from his base? Do you know whether both sides back away?
Well, certainly the president seemed to backtrack, and that was the one bit of encouragement, I guess, I heard out of the entire discussions coming out. I was pretty discouraged all along the line, but was the president was willing to put Social Security on the table. I remember walking to work, going towards the Capitol, and seeing the headlines in the newspaper in the early morning hours saying, and being that the Social Security is on the table, so thank goodness. So finally, entitlements, which is, I think Jim and I would agree, is the area that we need to address if we're ever going to try to rein in federal spending, is on the table. Finally, the president is saying that he's going to stand up to his base and say that I'm going to recognize this. Do the same thing that President Bush did during his administration, say you have to look at Social Security, you have to look at Medicare, you have to look at Medicaid. And this is not a partisan issue. As you know, I served on the Budget Committee for 8 years now. It doesn't matter who comes into that committee, whether you're on the right or the left, whether you have the Brookings Institute or you have Cato or Heritage or somebody else coming into there, they all say the same thing. Entitlements have to be on the table. The president said it was going to be on the table. Pelosi on the left and the rest on the left pushed back on it, and he backtracked.
But if that's on the table, why can't taxes be on the table at all? Because
because it is not a revenue problem. It is a spending problem. It is a problem of that we're just spending more than we're taking in.
Congressman Garrett sort of said that he was happy that the president was willing to stand up to his base by talking about Social Security and Medicare, but you just heard the congressman say that under no circumstances are taxes on the table. Look, everything has to be on the table. We've got this manufactured baloney crisis around this debt ceiling, right, which everybody understands is a piece of fiction, but nonetheless very, very dangerous. We should be talking about Medicare and Social Security, but to be holding up, to be saying we thrill that the president is willing to stand up to his base, but there's no way that we're going to stand up to our Tea Party base to consider revenue in any regards. And revenue, by the way, includes subsidies for oil companies, subsidies for big agriculture. I mean, come on, everything has to be on the table if we're going to get this thing done.
Scott, you say it's not a revenue problem, but we are looking at a situation where our tax revenue is something closer to 15% than what it's traditionally been, closer to 20%. So we do have a situation where we're not taking in the dollars we used to. So that's a revenue problem and a spending problem.
Well, that's a part of the problem because of the larger economic problem that we're finding right in the country right now. If we could get the economy going back again, if we were back into the days where we were when President Bush was in power, when there were Republicans in power, where you saw where the GDP was up closer to 3%, and as opposed to where right now, you would see the revenues going back up into the historic levels again, which is average about around 18%. So if we can get back at
that's assuming that job growth comes back, and the Democrats have said the job growth would be much better than it has been to this point.
Well,
you ask people to make a lot of assumptions.
They said the job growth would be a lot better than it was if all we did was spend $700 billion on the students.
And wouldn't it be great if we go to the job growth that we had during the Clinton administration, which was a full point higher than the job growth, significantly higher than the job growth that we saw in the Bush administration.
And by the way, he brought taxes down. He reined
Bill Clinton brought taxes down.
He reined in spending is how he did those things.
He reined in spending. He raised taxes. George Bush lowered taxes dramatically in 01 and 03, and we saw anemic tax growth. Now, look, nobody wants to see higher taxes. Nobody wants to see higher taxes. But the argument that higher taxes now, particularly when we're not talking about raising taxes on individuals, but we're talking about getting rid of these god-awful loopholes in the tax code, the idea that that's going to be job-killing is frankly a disservice.
Well, the idea that you can do that in 10 days is a little hard to believe, too.
Well, that's true, too.
We're coming up with an entire corporate tax structure.
Look, nobody's arguing that we shouldn't be talking about Medicare and Social Security. Security. In the long run, those programs have very substantial challenges. Are we going to get it done in 10 days? Look, if we could get a deal that was equitable and fair and smart, that'd be great. I don't know that we're going to do it in 10 days. Eventually, we need to do that. Nobody's disputing that. But to say, look who's walked out of these talks. You know, Cantor, Coburn, lately Boehner. Who's being intransigent? You know, the president's saying, let's talk about Medicare. Let's talk about Social Security. The Republicans are walking out every single week.
Okay, are we back at a point where you can agree that what Vice President Biden had set up in those negotiations is an okay, acceptable point, so we just get the debt ceiling dealt with and then we deal with the bigger problems after? Is that
as far as dealing and how you deal with it? I mean, one of the problems that I have coming from where I do, which is maybe a little bit further to the right than where some of our leadership is if you're only talking about $1 billion is where they are right now as far as cuts that perceivably on the table. Well, you saw the Lindsay article in the Wall Street Journal several weeks ago, right? What did that say? That if the interest rates go up a little bit, not a lot, just go back to where they were, close to where they were during the Carter years, you're not looking at a deficit cutback of that much. You're looking at, I think it was $4 trillion in those projections. So you're talking about only, well, we can save $1 trillion over 10 years. That pales into what we really need to do if interest rates start to spike up. And I think
okay, so down to brass tacks, $2.5 billion, 10 days. Is that a doable proposition or not?
I think it's all doable. I think if they get down to it and say this is what we need to do.
But what do you need? What do you need in the next 10 days?
Well, there you go. I love that question. So what we're proposing for that is cut, cap, and balance. To cut significantly, put in statutory changes with this, some like Graham-Rudman type thing, and a balanced budget amendment as well. All those things are possible.
And but the tax stuff off the table. You won't even touch it.
No one can explain to me ever in the 8 years that I've been in Congress how you actually improve the economy, how you put people back to work by taxing the very same companies that are producing those jobs, raising taxes on them, taking more money out of those corporations, those job producers. No one has ever explained to me how that helps the economy.
I have a thing from the week in Wall Street Journal, Becky, when I was in Europe reading this. I was in shock because it was the European edition of the week in Wall Street Journal. They go back 10 years and show under a 35% top bracket under the Bush tax cuts. We were at 18 and 19% revenue for years and years and years. Then you look at when Bush, when he did cut tax, what caused us the big shortfall in revenue collected by the government, it wasn't just that was about 15% of the shortfall. It was the weak economy that caused 10%
unemployment.
You know, you had the governor of Delaware on exactly 20 minutes ago. Delaware, a state not unfamiliar with successful businesses, and the governor of Delaware sat right here and said, you know what, when I go in and talk to businesses in Delaware who want to move to Delaware, not one of them, or I guess he said 5 out of dozens, mention taxes. They mention schools. They mention utilities. They mention efficient government. This notion that, you know, were we to return to the tax codes of the 90s.
And you can cherry pick that comment, but he also said all he thinks about is making his state a good climate for business. Well, we don't hear that. That's what you've been hearing from your president, that all we think about is making this country a good place for business?
Do you think that what happened prior to this president taking office with the destruction of the financial services market, do you think that's really the president's fault?
Is that why we're in this position right now? Because of that, you don't think it has to do with regulation, NLRB, EPA, Dodd-Frank, Obamacare,
we are,
tax uncertainty. You guys take over from me. No.
Come on, NLRB. Look, NLRB. The challenges out there.
If you cared that much about jobs, you'd let this be happening in South Carolina.
I care profoundly about jobs.
You'd let this be happening in South Carolina.
But look, you know, we've got profound uncertainty in the housing market, right? I mean, that is the #1 thing. Consumers are not spending. So to say that NLRB, or, you know, did you not want to do Dodd-Frank? Is there uncertainty? Of course there's some uncertainty.
How about the uncertainty about all the Dodd-Frank regulations?
We're coming out of a near 1930s level recession. You think that all of a sudden, after a year, uncertainty is going to disappear?
Well, after $700 billion, I would hope we're not at 9.2%.
How about we work on aggregate demand?
So far, you haven't put in your language that it's Bush's fault, but that's basically everything.
You know why? Because I don't participate in this kind of political demagoguery.
Your colleague,
Bush's fault. Look,
your colleague Debbie said that you own the economy, right? Debbie Wasserman-Schultz from Florida. She says you own the economy. At some point, you have to.
I don't speak for Debbie Wasserman-Schultz.
Well, do you own the economy? Do the Democrats? How long do they have to?
Scott, you and I both know that neither president nor any Congress really, at the end of the day, controls the economy. What we do know is that we're coming out of
a good indication of which way the economy should go, and for all the reasons that were just cited, the economy is not going in the right direction. We could have turned things around. We could have provided for the certainty of the marketplace that the marketplace was looking for after September of '08, but we didn't. didn't. We just went in 180 degrees the other direction. We passed Dodd-Frank, a bill which I'm sure that you did not read before you actually passed the bill.
I read
Just
that.
as
I
the
helped
Obama-
write that bill, Scott. I don't know how you can say that. You and I both know we sit on that committee together. Look, 2 years ago, this country was losing almost 1 million jobs every single month. Almost 1 million jobs. Today, we're adding jobs at a rate that
18,000
doesn't...
jobs. At that
Would
rate,
you rather be
at
where
that
we were
rate,
2
how
years
long
ago?
will- at that
Do you
rate-
want to go back to 2 years ago when this president was
Congressman,
forming...
would you argue the counterfactual on the stimulus?